Today I'm going to give you a demo of how to have a lovely cat like this boy, Topaz, who is the loveliest, sweetest being on earth. And he will be part of our audience today. So I'm going to show you how to print a linoleum cut, or a lino cut as we say. So, ooh, it's boring. So this is the block that I showed you in the first demo. You know, it had some cuts in it and I just decided to continue and cut some more. So you can see there are some marks made with a U-gouge that are very wide, and these marks are made with the number 1, the very skinny V-gouge, and then there's sort of a mixture of other ones in there too. So I'm going to proof this one, but I also wanted to show you a different approach to cutting a linoleum block. This is, oh, he wrote on here top. Okay, so it goes like this. This is an extreme cutting of a block. And I can tell because there's a hole in the burlap here. Not only did he cut through the linoleum, he hit the burlap and cut through that. See, there's a hole in there. You can certainly do that. You can cut as much as you want, but this is unnecessary, this much cutting. It'll print sort of the same as if it's not as deep. And also, I mean, look at this. This is like a limp slice of pizza right here. You don't need to carve that much. I actually love the way this looks as an object, and I'm sure it prints beautifully, but it shows an overextension. It's using more, it uses more cutting than one needs to. So here is our block, and I have cleaned my roller, as you saw me the other demo. I have cleaned my acetate and reapplied it to my tray with a piece of white paper. I took it off to clean it because I'm guessing that if you cleaned it just from the outside, some water would go on the other side and you'd have, you wouldn't have a completely white piece of paper. Oh, I need to get my gloves. Why don't you let's do a little close up on this beautiful boy here while I go get my gloves. Oh, that nose. I just can't believe that beautiful boy. All right, got my gloves on. Of course, I have my apron on, and I have my sheet down, you know, being very consistent in my practice of clean, safe art making. And I'm gonna put out my ink, just a little ribbon of ink. Ooh, and an air bubble. And I'm going to spread it out as I did before. There are different techniques that require a more specific and regimented rolling of ink. And, you know, this one doesn't. It can be sort of disorganized. But you'll see one thing, I'm letting this spin a little bit here, right? Just so it can hit a different part of the roller, or sorry, the brayer each time. Okay, so I'm gonna roll up here on my cardboard. And again, I'm sort of doing this with no particular technique. Now this is pretty much one pass over. I can see I've got a little bit of linoleum caught there maybe. And you can see that, you know, there's going to be some information printing here, which I wanted. And, you know, in these areas that are not quite as wide, there won't be anything printing there. I think, just for the sake of, you can see the shine, but it's quite thin. See how the ink shines over the block? But it's quite thin, so I'm going to roll up, I'm going to load up this brayer again. And see if I can get just a little bit more. And you can see that it's becoming a little bit more sort of sand-like, right? And each of the marks has its own distinction. You know, there aren't any marks that are flooded with ink, but I could get it even more inky. What you want to do is get it as covered as you can without flooding anything, without filling up any carved spaces. And with this ink, if you flood it, if you put too much ink on so it fills up spaces in the block, you can simply take a paper towel and wipe it off and then start again. At worst, you can wash your block. However, if your block gets wet, it's kind of hard to overcome. It takes quite a while to dry, and I wouldn't print a wet block because it will be a soupy mess. Okay, let's see how this works. And I'm going to set up my registration just as I did before. Actually, I'm going to do it this way because I think it's a little bit easier to do it sideways. You can see that the linoleum is a little bit higher than the mat board of my registration jig. That doesn't present any problem. And I'm going to do this with my bare hands so I can really feel what's going on. Okay, my paper, if it has a smooth side and a rough side, the rough side should go against the print. Sorry, against the linoleum. I think it picks up ink better, sort of grabs the ink better. Okay, and I'm just going to put another piece of paper. Remember, this is just printer paper, and you can move the jig away, you know, like so. Or you can keep it there. I guess it depends on how clean it is. But I'm just getting my, my paper stuck down to the ink. Remember, this Baron is one way to get started, but it doesn't ever really finish the print. It doesn't apply enough pressure. And you can use one of two different things to burnish the paper. So I'll use this metal spoon before I used a wooden spoon. They will both work. I've seen people sometimes use a doorknob. Like if they have a doorknob that's taken off their door or their cupboard, like a wooden doorknob or a glass one, that will also work. I'm sure you can find other objects that are smooth, have a rounded surface, and can slide against here. And again, this won't come in contact with ink, so it could be lots of different things. All right, so you want to see just a little bit here. Let's take a little peek and see if this is taking the ink as it should. Looks pretty good, but I'm going to now take just a little bit of time to burnish this without the paper on top. I can see where the image is, and so I know maybe where it needs to get a little extra burnishing. And one thing that's good is to burnish in a circle, so then you don't really have stopping and starting points, you know, so where you can kind of burnish like this, use some muscle. And then we'll take another peek. People often forget the very, very edge. So remember to try and hit that. And you might find that you see the paper kind of dipping down in different parts. And that's fine as long as it doesn't get torn. This block has, you know, it's like a mountain peak. It has low points and high points, and the paper is supposed to really lay down onto it. So it would dip in a low point. Okay, don't want to get a crimp in the paper. Ooh, looking pretty good. If you don't like this, you know, this little extra sort of salty bit, you know, you can try to go back to it and kind of touch things up as you look. Let's see if that addresses that. A little bit darker, so that's nice. And that way, you know, you don't pull the paper off all at once. If you pull the paper up all at once, you might have some areas that you wish you had gone back to. So that's what I'm doing, is sort of taking it off little bit by bit and addressing each part as I go. Let's see what's next. I'm gonna hit this just a little bit. And you know, this is what this process in particular is what I'm referring to when I say you need patience. This isn't immediate by any means. And in fact, you know, as we're getting toward the end of the semester, this is probably the most time-consuming process we're going to have, and that's not coincidental. You know, I'm starting the semester. I have started the semester with things that are, you know, sort of like easier to find, you know, textures and materials, and we're ending with an art material. And one that takes more time and focus. We've kind of worked our way up. Let's see, I'm gonna hit this just a little bit. And I'll go around here. This is just like different situations. For example, you see potters burnishing their, you know, a lot of Asian and Native American pots are made by burnishing the clay with a spoon. And this is that same sort of situation. You're pushing the fibers of the paper into this block with the back of a spoon. And you'll probably see also that the paper is smoother in the places where the print is, where it might be a little bit rougher here. Okay. So again, this is a proof. You can feel this ink is pretty sticky. This is a proof, so if I don't like how it looks, I'll make a mental note about how to change it and try again. And again, if you're worried about wasting the paper that you have, just print on this for the beginning. Okay, it's its own sort of funky landscape. And I'd say that looks good, but let's say, oh, I don't like that at all. That doesn't look good to me. I'm gonna try and ink it heavier. And that really means also just changing the amount of ink that you put down. And so I'll be a little bit heavy-handed with this and lay it down thicker, and we'll compare. So I'm gonna kind of spread this out. You want it to be an even coating, but you can tell just by the way this sounds and how sort of shiny it is, there's more ink there. And as I go, it will look different. Now I'm gonna load this up. Oopsies, I need my cardboard under here. Gotta sort of get my stations set up again. The reason why I put the cardboard here is because I don't really want to roll ink onto the sheet. That's my clean space. And so I'm layering the ink over the block as I just printed it. There is no need to wash the linoleum in between prints. You can just roll, print, roll, print. That's it. Plus it would be a real pain if you did have to wash between, because the linoleum block, it holds so much moisture. Okay, this looks different. Look how sparkly it is. It's loaded up. It has a heavier application of ink. So I can make a really good guess that, yeah, this is gonna be darker. All right, how did I do it? I did it like this. And I'm gonna lay another piece of paper with some cat hair on it, with the rough side down, just as I did before. Use my jig, take my time and be patient. Use my Baron. and a firm touch. Oopsies, I got a little bit of ink on the back. I suppose better the back than the front. Sometimes people wash their hands before they get to this part for that very reason. So their whole piece of paper will be clean. But you know, I am doing this over this printer paper here, so it's not actually on my print. Okay. Let's see, let's take a look right at it, and I'll just burnish it right onto the paper instead of through this, because having printed the first time, I know it's not going to tear the paper, right? And again, you can use a wooden spoon if you want. I think that with a certain matrix, a metal spoon sort of skates on top of the ink. And I feel like with linoleum it does, the metal spoon does better. Getting the edge of the linoleum. And just giving it a little pressure before I look. Okay. Let's take a little peek and see if we have it darker. It looks generally darker. In fact, I don't really see a whole lot I need to emphasize. Let's see along this whole swath of ink here if there's something that needs to be addressed. Maybe just a little bit there. And here you can see I'm using a little bit more at the very edge rather than the flat bowl of the spoon. And that just makes, it's a little bit harder, but also you can focus on a smaller space if you use the very edge. Okay, so let's see. Looks good and dark. I'll pull up a little bit more. I know this kind of strange pickly shape was a little bit dry. Oh, there we go. We got a little bit of something we need to address here. One thing about printing with this ink is that sometimes it can dry on the block, because it's water-based, it dries quickly. Whereas oil-based ink dries slowly. Let's see, I've got a little bit just right there I'm gonna address. But in the end, compared to other print processes, this is actually pretty quick. When you do a lithograph, which is a print on stone, it takes forever. Actually, I shouldn't say that. It doesn't take forever, but the work that goes into making the matrix is much more involved than this. And it's printed on a press, which may be quicker, but generally from beginning to end, it's longer. And this is direct. It doesn't have to be intuitive. You can see the mark you're making. You can see what's not going to print. So there's not a whole lot of guesswork. And there's no science. All right, just for good measure, I'm going to give this a little push. And then I'm going to pull this up and we can look at the two prints together. And if I'm finished, yeah, come on now. Come on, little baby. Okay, if I'm finished, I'm going to wipe this down with a moist towel. And again, I'll wash that down. But you can see that, in a sense, this is a better impression because everything that's carved out is white, the color of the paper, and everything that's left that I didn't carve is truly the color of the ink, right? It's more saturated. And especially in comparison, this looks salty and sort of thirsty. So it might take you a couple of tries to figure out the appropriate amount of ink. But that's what this is about. It's about experimenting until you find the right thing. Proofing is doing a test print until you find the right thing. And I'd say that in a sense, this demo is a little bit abbreviated, because when you start inking, you'll probably have, a couple of proofs before you get to the one that you want. Just because, newcomers take a little bit more time and experimentation. And in that way, if you're not ready, if you feel like you're going to run out of paper, of this nice Asian paper, just try some proofs on your printer paper so you don't feel precious about what's happening. Okay, what else do I want to say? I think that is it.